The world's richest aren't as untouchable as they seem. From Nicholas Puig losing $16 billion to Martin Selig going bankrupt, even Elon Musk's $372 billion empire is showing cracks. Behind the luxury jets and mansions, fortunes are vanishing. Today we reveal the shocking truth about how some of your favorite billionaires are secretly going broke. Nicholas Puig. Nicholas Puig's $16 billion fortune represents one of 2025's most mysterious billionaire collapses, illustrating how even inherited luxury empire wealth can vanish through alleged financial fraud and mismanagement. The 82-year-old Hermes heirs situation reads like a financial thriller with devastating real-world consequences. Puig has alleged that his former wealth manager orchestrated the disappearance of about 6 million Hermes shares worth $15 to $16 billion, creating what may be the largest case of missing billionaire assets in modern history. These shares, representing his 5.7% stake in the luxury brand, were deposited in a Swiss bank in 2012, but have since become completely unaccounted for. The legal complexity surrounding Puig's missing fortune creates multiple layers of financial vulnerability. A Swiss court dismissed his fraud case against his former wealth manager in 2024, ruling no evidence of wrongdoing, while a US lawsuit in April 2025 accused Puig of failing to deliver shares in a $16 billion deal, potentially owing $1.3 billion in damages. What makes Puig's situation particularly tragic is his complete helplessness in recovering his wealth. Hermes executive chairman Axel Dumas publicly stated in July 2025 that Puig no longer holds these shares, confirming they are gone for good. The mysterious death of his former wealth manager Eric Freymond in an apparent suicide has added another layer of complexity, potentially taking crucial information about the missing shares to the grave. While Puig's fortune vanished through alleged financial fraud, another billionaire's empire is crumbling in plain sight as market forces expose decades of over-leveraged real estate bets. Martin Selig. Martin Selig's $1.2 billion fortune, built through decades of Seattle real estate dominance, has crumbled spectacularly in 2025, demonstrating how even the most established property empires can face complete dissolution when market forces converge with over-leveraged positions. Selig defaulted on hundreds of millions in loans, with his company unable to repay $379.1 million in maturing debt by January 2025. The 88-year-old developer's troubles stem from Seattle's devastating 36% downtown office vacancy rate, a direct result of pandemic-driven remote work trends that have permanently altered commercial real estate demand. The speed of Selig's empire's disintegration has been breathtaking. By June 2025, 19 of his 30 buildings were under outside management or ceded to lenders, with 9 assets including his company headquarters entering receivership. This represents a loss of control over 2/3 of his portfolio in just months. The crisis forced MSRE to lay off 86 employees in March 2025, while his son Jordan Selig departed the firm in April, highlighting how financial pressures can destroy both business operations and family relationships simultaneously. Unlike some billionaire struggles that remain hidden, Selig's collapse has become a public symbol of commercial real estate's broader challenges. As Selig's real estate empire dissolves under debt pressure, the world's richest man faces his own leverage crisis that could unravel even faster than a property portfolio collapse. Elon Musk. Elon Musk, a man whose $372 billion net worth might suggest complete financial invincibility, yet whose current situation reads like a masterclass in how even the world's richest person can find themselves walking a tightrope over an abyss of financial uncertainty. Musk's troubles in 2025 stem from what financial experts are calling a perfect storm of over-leveraging and market volatility. Despite his astronomical net worth, Musk has experienced losses ranging from $60.5 billion to $80 billion year to date, primarily driven by Tesla's precipitous stock decline of 18% to 25%. This isn't just a paper loss that he can shrug off. It's a fundamental erosion of the very foundation upon which his entire financial empire rests. The underlying issue plaguing Musk is what insiders refer to as his leverage trap. Musk has secured billions in personal loans using his Tesla stock as collateral, creating a dangerous feedback loop where declining stock prices don't just reduce his net worth, they actively threaten his liquidity. When you're borrowing against assets that are simultaneously losing value, every percentage point drop in Tesla's stock price tightens the noose around your financial neck. Tesla's struggles in 2025 aren't merely the result of market fluctuations. The company is facing a multifaceted crisis that includes sales slumps and significant political backlash under the Trump administration, creating uncertainty that goes far beyond typical business cycles. Meanwhile, his acquisition of Twitter, now rebranded as X, has become what many financial analysts describe as a money-burning machine. X's advertising advertising revenue has plummeted dramatically, while Musk continues to pour resources into the platform's transformation. Perhaps most concerning is xAI, Musk's artificial intelligence venture, which is reportedly burning through $1 billion per month. For most people, a $1 billion monthly expense would represent complete financial annihilation. For Musk, it represents a significant drain on his resources that, when combined with his other financial pressures, creates a scenario where even his vast wealth begins to look finite. The real danger lies in what happens if Tesla's stock continues to decline. Margin calls on his leveraged positions could force Musk to sell assets at the worst possible time, potentially triggering a cascade effect that could see his empire unravel with surprising speed. As one social media observer astutely noted, Elon is overextended cash poor right now. The richest guy in the world could go bankrupt quicker than most may think, given the right amount of pressure on his companies. While Musk's struggles stem from over-leveraging and concentrated bets, another tech titan's diversification strategy is proving equally vulnerable to economic headwinds. Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos, with his $301 billion net worth, represents the second chapter in our exploration of billionaire vulnerability. The Amazon founder's situation in 2025 illustrates how even the most diversified and seemingly stable business empires can find themselves under extraordinary pressure when multiple economic forces converge. Bezos has experienced losses ranging from $22.5 billion to $36 billion in early 2025, figures that would represent the entire GDP of smaller nations. These losses aren't occurring in isolation, but are the result of a systematic assault on Amazon's core business model. The combination of new tariffs, recession fears, and the company's decision to lay off more than 27,000 employees signals deep structural challenges that extend far beyond typical business cycle adjustments. What makes Bezos' situation particularly precarious is how these challenges are affecting Amazon's fundamental value proposition. The e-commerce giant built its empire on the promise of endless growth and market expansion, but 2025 has seen that narrative seriously questioned. Consumer spending patterns are shifting dramatically, with inflation and economic uncertainty forcing even middle-class consumers to reconsider their online shopping habits. The Washington Post, Bezos' media acquisition, has become another source of financial drain rather than diversification. The publication is experiencing significant subscription declines, adding unreported losses to Bezos' portfolio at a time when media companies across the board are struggling to find sustainable business models in an increasingly fragmented attention economy. Perhaps most concerning for Bezos is how his diversification strategy, once seen as a sign of sophisticated wealth management, is now working against him. His investments in space exploration through Blue Origin, while visionary, represent significant capital commitments in a sector that remains largely unprofitable. When your core business is under pressure and your diversification bets aren't paying off, even a $301 billion net worth can begin to feel constraining. If Bezos represents the risks of diversification during economic uncertainty, our next billionaire illustrates the dangers of betting everything on a single technological vision. Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg's $275 billion net worth tells only part of the story of a man who has effectively bet his company's future, and by extension his personal fortune, on a technological vision that has yet to prove its viability. In 2025, that gamble is looking increasingly precarious, with financial pressures mounting from multiple directions. The most glaring issue facing Zuckerberg is Meta's staggering $40 billion+ loss on metaverse investments, representing one of the most expensive corporate bets in modern business history. These aren't just sunk costs that can be written off. They represent ongoing commitments that continue to drain resources while generating minimal revenue. Meta's advertising revenue, the company's primary source of income, is declining, just as these metaverse investments require maximum financial support. What makes Zuckerberg's situation particularly challenging is the timing of these pressures. The company experienced a $7 billion single-day drop in February, demonstrating how quickly market sentiment can shift when investors lose confidence in a company's strategic direction. This volatility isn't just affecting stock prices, it's creating uncertainty about Meta's ability to fund its long-term vision while maintaining current operations. Adding to these challenges are ongoing antitrust lawsuits and regulatory scrutiny that are generating significant legal costs while creating uncertainty about Meta's future business model. Antitrust actions don't just threaten companies with fines, they can force fundamental changes to business structures that eliminate entire revenue streams overnight. Perhaps most telling is a seemingly small detail that reveals larger financial pressures. Meta was forced to close a school for underprivileged children due to financial difficulties. When a company company worth hundreds of billions cannot maintain funding for a relatively modest philanthropic project, it suggests that cash flow pressures are more significant than public statements might indicate. While Zuckerberg grapples with the metaverse gamble, another tech legend faces his own challenges as established dominance meets disruptive change. Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison's $252 billion fortune represents one of the technology industry's greatest success stories, built through Oracle's dominance in enterprise software and database technology. However, 2025 has revealed how even the most established technology empires can find themselves vulnerable to rapidly changing market conditions and geopolitical pressures. Ellison has experienced losses of up to $20 billion in early 2025, primarily due to Oracle's stock volatility resulting from technology sector tariffs and broader market corrections. What makes these losses particularly concerning is how they reflect underlying challenges to Oracle's business model that extend far beyond temporary market fluctuations. The enterprise software market that Oracle has dominated for decades is undergoing fundamental transformation. Cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and changing customer preferences are forcing even established players to make massive investments in new technologies while defending traditional revenue streams. Oracle's heavy investments in AI and cloud technologies represent necessary strategic moves, but they also create significant financial pressure during a period when core business areas are facing increased competition. Ellison's situation is complicated by his company's exposure to global trade tensions. Technology sector tariffs don't just affect companies' cost structures, they create uncertainty about future market access and competitive positioning. For a company like Oracle, which has built its success on global enterprise relationships, trade disruptions can have cascading effects that aren't immediately apparent in quarterly earnings reports. The hidden vulnerability in Ellison's position lies in what industry analysts call legacy advantage erosion. Oracle's historical dominance in database technology provided the company with recurring revenue streams that seemed virtually guaranteed. However, newer competitors offering cloud-native solutions are increasingly winning enterprise customers, potentially undermining the foundation of Oracle's business model. As Oracle's legacy advantages erode, the semiconductor industry's newest kingpin is discovering that even revolutionary technology can't shield against geopolitical storms. Jensen Huang. Jensen Huang's $182 billion net worth represents one of the most dramatic wealth creation stories of the artificial intelligence era. However, 2025 has demonstrated how quickly fortunes built on technological trends can face existential challenges when geopolitical and market forces converge. The most significant threat to Huang's wealth comes from China export restrictions that cost Nvidia $5.5 billion and broader tariff policies affecting the semiconductor industry. Huang experienced a staggering $20 billion loss in a single day in January, demonstrating how concentrated wealth in volatile technology stocks can evaporate with shocking speed. What makes Huang's situation particularly precarious is Nvidia's dependence on the AI boom that has driven much of the company's recent success. With AI hype beginning to cool and a 21% stock decline already materialized, there are growing questions about whether current valuations can be sustained if the AI revolution fails to deliver on its most ambitious promises. The semiconductor industry's inherent cyclical nature compounds these challenges. Unlike software companies that can scale rapidly with minimal additional investment, semiconductor businesses require massive capital expenditures for manufacturing facilities and research and development. When demand softens or geopolitical tensions restrict market access, these fixed costs can quickly transform from competitive advantages into financial burdens. Supply chain issues resulting from tariffs create additional operational challenges that extend beyond immediate financial impacts. Semiconductor manufacturing requires complex global supply chains that can take years to establish and months to redirect when disrupted. For Nvidia, maintaining its technological edge while navigating these disruptions requires continued massive investment during a period of increased uncertainty. While Nvidia's AI crown faces pressure from export restrictions, the hardware industry's established players are confronting their own existential challenges. Michael Dell. Michael Dell's $178 billion fortune, built through Dell Technologies' dominance in personal computers and IT infrastructure, faces mounting pressures in 2025 that illustrate how even established technology hardware companies can find themselves vulnerable to rapidly changing market conditions. Dell has experienced losses ranging from $13 billion to $20 billion in early 2025, primarily resulting from technology market downturns and supply chain disruptions caused by new tariff policies. These losses losses reflect deeper structural challenges facing the entire hardware industry as businesses and consumers delay technology purchases amid economic uncertainty. The personal computer market that formed the foundation of Dell's empire is experiencing what industry analysts describe as a demand cliff. Remote work trends that drove computer sales during the pandemic have normalized, while economic pressures are causing both businesses and consumers to extend the life cycle of existing technology rather than upgrading to newer systems. For a company built on selling hardware, this shift represents a fundamental challenge to its business model. Security concerns and resulting stock price plunges add another layer of complexity to Dell's challenges. In an era where cybersecurity has become a paramount concern for businesses and governments, any questions about hardware security can have immediate and severe impacts on sales and market confidence. What makes Dell's situation particularly challenging is the company's heavy reliance on global supply chains that have become increasingly vulnerable to geopolitical tensions. Supply chain tariffs don't just increase costs, they create uncertainty about future pricing and availability that can cause customers to delay purchases or seek alternative suppliers. As traditional hardware faces commoditization pressures, the architect of internet search confronts threats that could fundamentally reshape his advertising empire. Larry Page. Larry Page's $171 billion net worth, built through Google's revolutionary transformation of internet search into a global advertising empire, faces unprecedented challenges in 2025 as regulatory pressures and changing market dynamics threaten the very foundations of his wealth. Page has seen his wealth erode by $17.8 billion to $30 billion year to date, with Alphabet stock experiencing a 13% decline that reflects growing investor concerns about the company's ability to maintain its dominant market position. These losses aren't merely the result of general market volatility. They reflect specific challenges to Google's business model that could have long-lasting implications. Antitrust scrutiny and regulatory pressure represent the most significant threat to Page's wealth. Unlike typical regulatory challenges that might result in fines or operational adjustments, current antitrust investigations threaten to fundamentally restructure how Google operates, potentially eliminating entire revenue streams or forcing the company to divest core assets. The advertising market that has been Google's financial foundation is undergoing dramatic transformation. Economic recession concerns are causing businesses to reduce marketing spending, while privacy regulations and changing consumer behaviors are making targeted advertising less effective and more expensive to implement. For a company that generates the vast majority of its revenue from advertising, these shifts represent existential challenges. Hidden legal costs associated with ongoing regulatory battles are creating financial drains that don't appear in headline financial figures but represent significant ongoing expenses. Major antitrust cases can consume hundreds of millions of dollars in legal fees while requiring extensive management attention that diverts resources from business operations. Page's situation is further complicated by Alphabet's investments in what the company calls moonshot projects. Ventures like Waymo, autonomous vehicles, continue to consume significant resources while generating minimal revenue. While these investments were easier to justify during periods of rapid revenue growth, they become more problematic when core business areas face pressure. While Page navigates antitrust battles threatening Google's core business, his co-founder faces the additional complexity of managing wealth during regulatory uncertainty. Sergey Brin. Sergey Brin's $149 billion fortune faces many of the same pressures as his Google co-founder Larry Page, but with additional complications that make his situation particularly interesting from a wealth preservation perspective. Brin has experienced losses ranging from $20 billion to $27 billion, reflecting the broader challenges facing Alphabet while highlighting specific vulnerabilities in his wealth management approach. What makes Brin's situation unique is his approach to wealth distribution during a period of market stress. Recent $700 million stock gifts may indicate cash flow needs rather than purely philanthropic motivations. When billionaires begin liquidating large positions during market downturns, it often signals underlying liquidity pressures that aren't immediately apparent from net worth calculations. Brin's involvement in AI development and moonshot projects like Calico, longevity research, represents both an opportunity and a financial burden. While these investments position him for potential future returns, they also require continued funding during a period when from Google's core advertising business faces unprecedented challenges. The regulatory environment affecting Google impacts Brin's wealth in ways that extend beyond immediate stock price movements. As one of the company's founders, Brin faces personal exposure to regulatory actions that could include restrictions on his ability to sell shares or requirements to divest certain holdings. Similar to Page, Brin's wealth erosion from Google's regulatory vulnerabilities reflects how concentrated positions in technology companies can create systemic risks. Unlike diversified investors who can weather storms in individual sectors, founders whose wealth remains heavily concentrated in single companies face amplified exposure to company-specific risks. If the Google founders struggle with regulatory pressure in established markets, the cryptocurrency world's former king faces an even more precarious regulatory labyrinth. Changpeng Zhao. Changpeng Zhao's $75 billion net worth represents one of the most precarious positions on our list, illustrating how regulatory challenges can transform industry leadership into existential crisis virtually. Overnight, the former Binance CEO's situation in 2025 serves as a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes built in emerging industries can face fundamental threats. CZ has experienced a $12 billion decline resulting from multiple converging pressures that extend far beyond typical market volatility. Binance's 38% revenue drop, combined with $4.3 billion in fines and ongoing SEC lawsuits, creates a perfect storm of financial and legal pressures that threaten both his personal wealth and his business empire. The cryptocurrency industry's regulatory environment in 2025 has created what legal experts describe as an existential uncertainty for major exchanges. Personal charges and regulatory shutdown risks don't just threaten CZ's wealth, they threaten his freedom and ability to participate in the industry he helped create. What makes CZ's situation particularly challenging is the interconnected nature of his wealth and legal troubles. Unlike traditional business leaders who can step back from operations while maintaining financial interests, CZ's regulatory challenges could result in forced divestiture of his Binance holdings or restrictions on his ability to participate in cryptocurrency businesses. The volatile nature of cryptocurrency markets compounds these regulatory pressures. When regulatory uncertainty combines with inherent market volatility, the resulting price swings can be dramatic enough to threaten even substantial positions. Hidden liquidity crises in volatile crypto markets can develop rapidly when large holders need to sell positions to cover legal expenses or satisfy regulatory requirements. While crypto's volatility creates unique vulnerabilities for digital asset moguls, even the most prestigious traditional luxury empire isn't immune to economic pressures. Bernard Arnault. Bernard Arnault's $158 billion fortune, built through LVMH's dominance in luxury goods, faces challenges in 2025 that illustrate how even the most prestigious and seemingly recession-resistant businesses can find themselves vulnerable to global economic shifts and changing consumer behaviors. Arnault has experienced losses ranging from $18.3 billion to $26 billion year-to-date, primarily resulting from LVMH's dramatic performance decline. The company's 4% revenue drop and 22% profit plunge reflect fundamental shifts in global luxury consumption patterns that extend far beyond temporary economic fluctuations. The most significant challenge facing Arnault's empire is the luxury demand slump in China, which has historically been one of the most important growth markets for premium brands. Chinese consumers, facing their own economic pressures and changing attitudes toward conspicuous consumption, are reducing luxury purchases, just as tariffs on European goods make LVMH products more expensive in key markets. What makes this particularly concerning for Arnault is how luxury goods companies depend on aspirational purchasing behavior that can disappear rapidly during economic uncertainty. Unlike necessity goods that maintain demand regardless of economic conditions, luxury purchases are often the first expenses consumers eliminate when facing financial pressure. Despite official claims that there is no structural crisis, the underlying data suggests that LVMH is experiencing deeper sales declines than public statements acknowledge. When luxury companies begin emphasizing the temporary nature of their challenges, it often indicates that management is more concerned about underlying trends than they publicly admit. As luxury goods face aspirational deflation, one of philanthropy's greatest champions discovers that even intentional wealth distribution can create unexpected financial pressures. Bill Gates. Bill Gates' $157 billion net worth faces a unique set of challenges in 2025 that illustrate how even the most thoughtfully managed wealth can face unexpected pressures when philanthropic commitments intersect with market volatility and economic uncertainty. Gates experienced a $51 billion net worth drop within days following massive philanthropy pledges that commit 99% of his wealth to charitable causes over the next 20 years. While this decline represents intentional giving rather than market losses, it creates liquidity pressures that weren't present when his wealth was growing consistently. The timing of these philanthropic commitments coincides with challenges to Gates's diversified investment strategy. His investments in recession-hit real estate and agriculture are facing pressure just as his philanthropic commitments require consistent asset liquidation to fund charitable activities. What makes Gates' situation particularly interesting is how his wealth management strategy must now balance multiple competing objectives. Unlike typical billionaires who can focus primarily on wealth preservation and growth, Gates must maintain sufficient liquidity to fund ongoing philanthropic commitments while protecting enough assets to ensure those commitments can be sustained over decades. Despite his continued ties to Microsoft, Gates' wealth has become increasingly diversified across asset classes that may not provide the same growth potential as his original technology holdings. This diversification provides stability, but may reduce his ability to generate the returns necessary to sustain ambitious philanthropic commitments during extended market downturns. While Gates balances philanthropic commitments with market volatility, his former Microsoft colleague demonstrates how past success can become present vulnerability. Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer's $144 billion fortune illustrates how former technology executives can find themselves vulnerable to market forces long after leaving operational roles. Ballmer has experienced $20 billion in losses during 2025 market downturns, primarily due to his continued heavy exposure to Microsoft stock and broader technology sector challenges. What makes Ballmer's situation particularly interesting is how technology sector tariffs and market corrections continue to affect his wealth, despite his departure from Microsoft's day-to-day operations more than a decade ago. His experience demonstrates how concentrated positions in individual companies can create long-term vulnerability to sector-specific risks. Ballmer's ownership of the LA Clippers adds another dimension to his financial profile that could become problematic if sports franchise valuations decline. Professional sports teams, while generally considered prestigious assets, can face significant valuation pressure during economic downturns as corporate sponsorship budgets contract and consumer entertainment spending declines. While Ballmer has experienced gains in some areas, his heavy reliance on past technology holdings creates what financial advisors call legacy concentration risk, the danger that wealth preservation strategies built around historical success may not adapt well to changing market conditions. As former tech executives grapple with legacy concentration risk, the banking world's most prominent leader faces systemic pressures that no individual wealth can escape. Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon's $2.8 billion net worth, while modest compared to technology billionaires, represents a different type of financial vulnerability, tied to his role as CEO of JP Chase. Banking industry exposures to high inflation, potential bad debts, and public debt crises create risks that extend beyond typical market volatility. What makes Dimon's situation unique is how his wealth remains tied to the financial services industry during a period of unprecedented economic uncertainty. Problems with excess capital and potentially lofty bank valuations could strain personal wealth if economic downturns significantly impact loan portfolios and banking operations. The banking industry in 2025 faces what economists describe as a triple threat of rising interest rates, potential recession, and regulatory uncertainty. For bank executives whose wealth remains tied to their institution's performance, these challenges create personal financial risks that mirror their professional responsibilities. Dimon's situation illustrates how even experienced financial professionals can find themselves vulnerable to systemic risks that are difficult to hedge against. Unlike diversified investors who can reduce exposure to specific sectors, bank CEOs must maintain significant stakes in their institutions to align their interests with shareholders and regulators. While traditional banking faces its triple threat of challenges, the media and technology mogul who revolutionized financial information discovers his own empire's hidden vulnerabilities. Michael Bloomberg. Michael Bloomberg's $106 billion fortune faces unique pressures in 2025 that illustrate how even diversified media and technology empires can find themselves vulnerable to changing market conditions and personal commitment conflicts. Bloomberg's $3.7 billion in charitable donations during 2024, continuing into 2025, creates what wealth managers describe as distribution pressure, the need to liquidate assets for charitable purposes during a period when those assets may be declining in value. Unlike typical market losses that can be recovered over time, philanthropic distributions represent permanent reductions in wealth-generating capacity. The most significant hidden risk in Bloomberg's portfolio lies in potential collapse in Bloomberg terminal demand during market crashes. The Bloomberg terminal business, which generates the majority of his wealth, depends heavily on financial industry activity that could contract dramatically during extended economic downturns. Bloomberg's 88% ownership stake in Bloomberg LP creates what financial advisors call concentration amplification, a situation where the benefits of business ownership during good times become severe vulnerabilities during challenging periods. When a single business represents the vast majority of someone's wealth, any threat to that business becomes an existential threat to their financial security. The hidden vulnerability in Bloomberg's position lies in the cyclical nature of financial services demand. While Bloomberg terminals have historically been considered essential tools for financial professionals, cost-cutting during economic downturns often focuses on expensive technology services that may be perceived as non-essential. As Bloomberg's terminal empire faces cyclical demand pressures, America's retail royalty confronts the reality that even the most established consumer empires aren't immune to fundamental economic shifts. The Walton family. The Walton family's collective $367 billion fortune, with Jim Walton at $124 billion, Alice Walton at $122 billion, and Rob Walton at $121 billion, faces challenges in 2025 that illustrate how even the most established retail empires can find themselves vulnerable to fundamental shifts in consumer behavior and economic conditions. The family has experienced collective losses exceeding $20 billion, with individual family members losing between $600 million and $11 billion each. These losses stem from Walmart's 25% profit drop, significant stock declines, and the impact of inflation on consumer purchasing behavior. What makes the Walton family's situation particularly concerning is how their challenges reflect broader structural changes in retail rather than temporary economic fluctuations. Consumer pullback, job cuts, and store closures suggest that Walmart is facing fundamental questions about its business model during a period of rapid change in how consumers shop and what they can afford. The retail industry in 2025 is experiencing what analysts describe as demand destruction, a situation where economic pressure causes permanent changes in consumer behavior rather than temporary spending reductions. When consumers permanently lower their expectations about appropriate spending levels, it can create lasting pressure on retailers that depend on consistent consumer demand. The hidden struggle facing the Walton family lies in their limited diversification relative to their enormous wealth. While each family member has made efforts to diversify their holdings, the vast majority of their wealth remains tied to Walmart's performance. Cash flow strains in retail operations amid economic slowdown create risks that could affect the entire family's financial position simultaneously. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.